Sometimes you'll be walking and looking around outside, seeing the different elements of the environment that surrounds you. Somewhere you've already been before, you're used to seeing what you're seeing, there are no surprises. But you'll see a tree and stop in front of it, you'll look at it for a bit, and almost spontaneously, your mind will open, and you see it now. Although every time you had seen a tree you had observed it, you had been blind to its essence. When you were young, you wondered what it was that made this tree tick, and you eventually learned the metabolic principles behind it, like photosynthesis, and you understood how it came to be, why it exists the way that it does. But your word for life got diluted. For whatever reason, in this instant, you see the tree differently. It's not just a big mass of wood anymore, it's a living, breathing being. You realize that though you had a constructed view of the tree, you couldn't comprehend the idea of its life. Your eyes are open now, though. It's living a lifetime of stories. You can see those stories. The form of the branches molded through the wind, the leaves all competing to get as much sun as possible, the flowers it creates out of thin air to multiply and create another generation. It's living and moving, interacting with its environment. It just moves through time at a slower pace than you do. If you could speed up time, maybe you two would see the world in the same way. Maybe if you were in the same time frame, you would speak to one another. You would be friends. This tree is your brother. It shares DNA with you, breathing the same air as you, enjoying the same earth as you, and lit by the same sun as you. A certain overwhelming feeling comes over you as you realize that you are the same living, conscious substance as the tree in front of you. A feeling like you are both part of one bigger story. A feeling like if you opened your mind enough, you could communicate with it. That feeling of oneness, that feeling of being connected to all that is around you, to nature and to the universe. You're transported to a new world, one of lucidity, where you realize that your view up until this moment was obstructed. Your eyes were closed. Your thoughts don't seem to simply come from you anymore, they belong to the universe, and you simply borrow them for a brief moment, just enough time to think them, maybe even say a word or two, before giving them back. That feeling is rare, though. It's the same feeling as when you look down at your hands and your body, and though it is invisible to you, you visualize the air and its currents that constantly flow and graze you. Of course, it is clear as day to you where your body ends and the air begins, in the same way that two rocks that are stacked up are two separate rocks, despite being in contact with one another. But who decides what a rock is? They are both made up of the same stone as one another, and they are as close as they would be were they simply two regions of one bigger rock. In fact, they were at some point. In that case, calling them two separate rocks seems meaningless, doesn't it? And you realize that the same principle applies to you, because you're made up of the exact same rock, dirt, and water as everything that is around you. You share your composition with your environment. No, you are your environment. You suddenly realize that without your brain telling you that you are you, and that everything else is not you, there would be no you. There's that feeling again. That feeling of connectedness, of accordance and alignment with the universe. Your thoughts are not unique to you anymore. Everyone and everything is having them at the same time, but they manifest only within your brain, and you are but an extension of the cosmic mind. You can also get that feeling when you learn about history, about the thousands of generations of humans that came before you, and while reading the story of ancient people, you find something funny. You laugh. What a human thing to do. Humans thousands of generations ago laughed just as hard as you do. They felt the same feelings as you do. They laughed, they cried, they showed as much compassion as rage, as much humor as boredom, as much love as spite, and all just as much as you. These are not just images on a page. They were real people with inner worlds full of thought, emotion. There's that feeling again. Go further, you can ponder the first ever sea creature to decide to explore the land millions of years ago. Out of curiosity maybe, or sheer fucking boredom? The point is, you are the result of that decision. A direct line of parental lineage can be traced from that one fish to you. This is not a story being told, this is what actually happened. This is your actual, real, distant relative. If you go back far enough in time, you can become aware of your fraternal link to everybody. To your friends, your enemies, even the trees, the bugs on the ground, even the ground itself. And you feel it. It's that feeling of complete spatial and temporal coherence. Your thoughts don't just come from you, they come from the millions of generations of life, all leading up to one moment, that moment being now. And you can feel that we are all part of one bigger entity. That feeling you get when you look up into the night sky and realize you are gazing at forever. Not a drawing on a page, not a projection of what it looks like, but the actual gate to infinity. Nothing imaginary about this. Those stars are really there in front of you. That light has had a journey spanning millions of years, and it no doubt started that journey, leaving its home star, while the first fish to walk on land here on Earth was the first to gaze into the stars. And the light traveled through empty space, never encountering anything to absorb it, the loneliest journey one could imagine. But sure enough, that journey was leading up to one moment. Right now, as you look up into the bowels of the universe, that very same light ends its journey in your eye. That feeling is the feeling of that journey. That feeling when infinity is staring back at you. It's that feeling of unity, the realization of the absurdity of consciousness, the dematerialization of perceived reality, and the expanding of one's point of view to objectivity. Perhaps it's the feeling of your own mind tasting something much bigger than itself, a truth that transcends life and consciousness, a truth of unity. That feeling is scary, intimidating, exciting, but anytime you feel it, as soon as it hits like a shot of reality to the bone, it fades away. And you try to grab a hold of it and make it stay. It's addictive after all, but you're not meant to experience objectively. Perhaps it's the universe putting its hand out to reach your psyche. Perhaps it's your consciousness growing fast enough to leave stretch marks. Perhaps I'm the only one to feel that feeling. It feels like being the universe for a brief moment. It feels like being part of a truth you can only half hope to understand. And as soon as a piece of the puzzle is given to you, it's immediately, infuriatingly taken away. A glimpse of ultimate understanding. That feeling is so overwhelmingly strong that when you get it, it is impossible to think anything else than that this moment now is what consciousness was designed for, and what the entirety of your human life was leading up to. And you ask, why hasn't it? This incredible potential for understanding is right here all around us, but no one seems to see it. How come when I look all around me, everyone stops at the superficial layer of what is around them? They see trees as wooden statues. They see the evolution of their kind as a neat idea. They look at the sky above them at night and see an Instagram post that they think pairs nicely with a couple of star emojis. You really think you can capture the fucking cosmos with 67 likes and a comment from your BFF? Doesn't it seem like we could have just as easily not been conscious, not been walking, talking minds, and never have even gotten the chance to wonder what lies beyond the confines of one's own psyche? Am I the only one who takes time every now and then to feel that feeling of being face to face with something so majestic it escapes language and comprehension? Amazing. Is that how you would describe the taste of your breakfast this morning? Really? Are you so shallow that mere everyday life amazes you? How incredibly selfish, having ever thought to even ponder what boredom is when infinity is constantly in front of you. How incredibly foolish, having ever felt angry, spiteful, depressed, jealous, anxious, or sad in this vortex of reality we find ourselves in this dance between physical and conscious reality we find ourselves in. What a global mistake it is to spend time talking to one another, conversing about bullshit that is limited to our plane of reality, that's as fake as a void promise. If anyone could lift their attention for 10 seconds from their phones, books, friends, enemies that don't mean much, and boyfriends that just want to fuck, and they looked up into the stars and just tried to dream, tried to grasp the idea that everything ever known by conscious mind has only been a drop in an ocean of existence that we don't even know why it's there. I find people boring. I find interactions boring. I find eating, sleeping, studying in a fucking classroom boring. I find life infuriating. How would you feel if you lived in the confines of one room your whole life and only occasionally wondered what was outside, but every time you tried to open the door it was locked? What would the purpose even be? That feeling when you grasp at existential straws while blindfolded, when infinity is staring back and giving you answers, and the meaning is blinding but you can't see. There seems to be this disconnect between our minds and the world around us. We seem to put everything into boxes, categories, and separate ourselves from those categories. Though we may think a lot, though we may ponder what existence would be like if we removed those categories, Our minds are fixed to the way they evolved, and existential dread seems to be the force keeping us in line with how we are supposed to think. Maybe existential dread is the name of that feeling I've been talking about. But I know I've felt that feeling before, and only felt love in my heart for all mankind and for all matter, living and inanimate. So maybe there are two ways of seeing beyond what your human eyes will let you see. One way will instill you with a sense of universal megalophobia and hatred toward everyone content with simply being humans and not children of the cosmos. Well then, how can you consider yourself any closer to unity if you distance yourself from everyone? You render yourself as alone among people as you are when you're in your own head. The other way is called admiration. Looking outward and feeling the sense of grandeur and connectedness with everyone and everything is a transformative experience and can inspire awe in your soul and love in your heart. The sheer act of wondering can bring us together, and damn it, it's the most human thing we can do. Though we may categorize everything and separate everything, unity is in our bones, and all we are trying to do down here on the ground is come together, much like what happens everywhere else in the cosmos. We may be a bit misguided at times, but love, appreciation, empathy are all words we gave to that feeling. To look outward and wonder what the unity of the universe would look like without the human bias is to look inward and feel the very depths of what makes you, you.